Burnt is a movie about second chances, specifically about a guy named Adam Jones, who was a chef who moved to London and Paris first when he was a young teenager, and worked his way up and became very successful, but then really kind of ruined it, was self-destructive. And then we meet him in the movie trying to put his life back together, but he's doing it on his own, sort of white-knuckling it. He wants to get his group back together, help his friend out with his restaurant, and get a third Michelin star, because he'd achieved 2 before. And in the culinary world, 3 Michelin stars, that's like winning the World Series 4 times over. It's a movie about a guy who is fighting the temptation to allow people to help him. And in the end, the hope is that he realizes that he can't ever achieve what he wants without the help of others. Well, I've always been fascinated by food, eating it primarily. But growing up in an Italian household, my grandmother was an incredible cook, and we just grew up with food being basically what we talked about. You either talked about what you were going to eat, what you just ate, and what you're going to eat tomorrow. Those were basically the conversations that happened around the kitchen table with my family, which I think is people can relate to, actually. So I just always grew up with food, and I actually remember when I was a kid, there was a TV show. It was the Frugal Gourmet. Actually, he was always on. I used to always watch that guy, and I remember I could just watch cooking shows forever. And I just started. I always loved to cook food for my friends. Like they'd come over, and I'd always just love to just test out stuff. So it was just something that always came natural to me. I'd say I felt very lucky to be able to play a character who had so many dimensions, I think, and that wasn't a character that you thought, well, does a person like that really exist? I mean, I think that clearly I felt like, yeah, this all makes sense. This is a guy who's very tortured and trying to do the right thing, but he's making mistakes because he's doing it on his own. And we see those mistakes play out, and not in a watered down way. And that was great to play. The structure of the film is such that you actually get to see him come back into a place that he's been rejected, or either another city, and compile this sort of brigade again of this mercenary crew. One guy's in jail, another guy's trying to beat him up, another guy's this kid who's working at basically a kiosk, and then Helene, who he's got to steal from another kitchen. And you sort of watch Adam try to, shuck and jive his way through all this and sort of hustle his way into getting this brigade back, and actually hustle his way into having a restaurant that he could call his own, which he does by, in a way, blackmailing his former employee by inviting a food critic to come, and knowing that he won't be able to, that the restaurant will not be able to deliver the goods unless they let Adam cook for her. Sienna Miller plays Helene, who is a cook working at another restaurant that has a 1 Michelin star, and Adam meets her early on in the movie and recognizes right away a like-minded soul, somebody who has that focus, the talent, and he, being a smart chef, wants his brigade to be as talented as possible, woos her in order to become part of his brigade. She has an interesting background. She's a single mother, and she has to, but the hours that it takes to be a chef are pretty grueling. And she has to juggle between that world of being a mother and also having a full-time job as a chef. And he is also demanding a lot of her. So Sienna has a very interesting obstacle to play with. Also, having to put up with this guy who tries to do everything on his own. Yet it's a collaborative environment, a kitchen. I mean, I'm very lucky because I've gotten to work with several actresses more than once. And I think that's just because I'm very smart to know that when it's easy, when it works, keep working with that person and do anything you can to get them to do the movie. And I was just so lucky that after Sniper, Sienna agreed to play Helene, because I just thought she was perfect for her. And I just knew that it was going to be a very tough shoot. We were going to be in the kitchen. We're all doing the cooking. And it takes somebody who's really willing to just let it all hang out. And she's one of the most bold actors I've ever met. And I was right. She was incredible. I think it's maybe the best thing she's ever done. And she's done tremendous work, but I just think she's so great in this film. Daniel Bruhl's incredible. He plays Tony, who is the son of a restaurateur. and who was the maitre d' at a restaurant that they all worked in. The cool thing also is that you realize that all these characters worked together in Paris at a restaurant growing up, which is very much like Gordon Ramsay, Gordon Ramsay, Marcus Waring, and Mario Batali all worked for Pierre White at one time or another. And there's great stories about that era and them coming up. And so we like to sort of keep that going in this, where Adam worked at a restaurant from this guy Jean-Luc with Michelle and Max. And now they've all dispersed, and now Reese is this sort of nemesis played by Matthew Reese, who's incredible in the movie. And he has another restaurant, then they're sort of going back and forth, trying to outdo each other. So it's really interesting to see this sort of very insular world, but to the people inside it, the stakes are huge. Yeah, Marcus Waring is a leading chef who has made his home in London. He worked under Gordon Ramsay for years and then broke out onto his own and has his own, I think, 2 or 3 restaurants in London. One of them is a 2 Michelin star. He was absolutely invaluable. I'd say 30% of the things that come out of my mouth were written by him, because I just would ask him before every scene, what would you do here? What would you say here? You know, just for example, one scene when they're cooking for what they think are the Michelin who have come to judge the food. I said, you know, Adam doesn't stop talking. You know, make sure that, serve it how I gave it to you, keep it level, fingerprints off. You know, all those things were just things that he told me that I would just basically parrot. Everything you see on screen is the product of John's vision. John Wells, who directed the movie and really honed the story in a great script that Steve Knight wrote. John just came in and really was able to put it through his own lens, and authenticity is everything to him. And he, sought out Marcus Waring and his team, and just made sure that every time any of the actors stepped on set, that it was a fully functioning kitchen and that we were prepared and knew what we were doing.